Welcome to the Debunking Economics podcast with Professor Steve Keen. I'm Phil Dobbie, and today, money. We only ever see a bit of it, the small amount that turns up as cash in our wallets or our purses. The rest, of course, just moves from bank account to bank account. But what if we never saw any of it? What if we went totally cashless? Will it ever happen? And what are the repercussions for the economy if it does? In short, do we need cash? That's today on the Debunking Economics podcast. Well, we do know that Sweden is moving quickly to being a cashless society. There's lots of shops and restaurants that won't accept cash now over there. You have to pay by card. Even public toilets are cashless. You have to pay with your mobile phone. The proportion of cash payments in the retail sector fell from 40% in 2010 to about 14% in 2016, according to Sweden's central bank. Cash payments has fallen now to less than 2% of GDP. So what is the upshot if we see an end to hard currency altogether? Well, Steve, I can see, there's pros and cons here, isn't there? One, obviously, is it's more convenient than cash. But so, Steve, what is the upshot if we see an end to hard currency altogether?
One of my favourite books was the second in the series, the Rama series by Arthur C. Clarke. And Rama was a object that came drifting into the solar system, sending 3 blips on a very regular basis. And they've realised after all it was a cigar-shaped object from a foreign civilization passing through the solar system, which they thought was coming to say, hello, take us to your leader. And instead it was saying, take us to your solar system, take us to your solar power system. They just drained some energy off the sun and went by ignoring humanity, who then realised not only were they not the only species in the universe, they weren't even the most important. In fact, the neighbours didn't even bother knocking and asking for a cup of sugar as they went past. So what happened was a huge boom of eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow we're irrelevant. And people, there's an enormous speculative boom in a world in which there was no currency. And at the end of it, all the Ponzi bubble burst. And rather than people being able to come and take their money out of the banks in cash, there was no cash. And the economy went into an enormous funk, the deepest hole it's ever hit. Because at least when you have if you have a complete failure of a electronic monetary system, you have no money.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a failure of a mixed electronic and physical money system, then people are going to run to the physical money, and they'll still have that. But the failure of the credit system can be contained. But if you had, that's one reason I'm very sceptical about the whole idea of cashless society.
Well, we actually had, didn't we, a few weeks ago, we had the visa system broke down for one Friday afternoon, I think all over Europe, actually, and people were at petrol stations, for example, all of a sudden found they had no way of paying for the petrol that they'd already drawn out of the pump, and it did create a little bit of chaos. So, we've got examples of that. So the system's not faultless. So that, I take that as a...
That's my major problem, is that it's not faultless, and knowing enough about computer systems, I know you should never expect a faultless computer system. It's like expecting a faultless spouse. Yeah. Forget it. And put your spouse under enormous stress and watch what the fun is. No, thank you. And the same thing applies to the financial system.
We always get an insight into your private life on this podcast, don't we? But you could say the same thing. You have to get cash out of machines.
About yours.
I was going to no fault here. It's all hunky dory. Don't you worry about that. But
mine's out of earshot.
You can there's cash machines. You can get money out. That could go wrong. So the same thing could apply. You could say technology could fail us even with hard currency.
That requires a mechanical failure. If you think about ATMs everywhere, they're stashed with cash, and for actually not being able to get that out of the machine, then you've got to have the decision. And this actually happened, of course, to Greece. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I'm very sceptical about going to a cashless society, because if you're going to have a cashless society, then the people in control of your cashless money have to understand how the system works. Now, I know that the central banks in the main don't understand how their own system works. The private banks don't either. Neither do the Bitcoiners. So there's to trust your monetary system to governors of those systems, whether they're the centralized central banks, the private banks, or the decentralized Bitcoin networks, to trust them to people who don't actually understand the system in the first place is not the sort of thing I want to do.
And you know what? That is just the beginning of that discussion about the repercussions of a cashless economy, things we need to be aware of before we head that way. If you want to hear the discussion in full, then you need to become a subscriber to the Debunking Economics podcast, and you can do that at debunkingeconomics.com. Just choose one of the options on the right-hand side of the webpage. Or you can become a supporter of Steve on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Prof Steve Keen. If you pledge $10 or more support per month, then you'll get access to this and all the other podcasts in this series. And there's many, many of them, and we keep on adding to it. So come back soon after you've done one of those two things and listen to the full episode of this podcast. I'm Phil Dobbie with Professor Steve Keen. We'll see you next time.